Good morning. We'll call a meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Algonquin Highlands is located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We also acknowledge a historic shared presence of other Indigenous nations throughout the area, and we recognize these original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda for today? Councillors Shortreed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, Council approves the December 12th, 2024 regular agenda as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Yes, thank you. I have to declare conflict of interest on item 8A, which is the short-term rental appeals committee, as I own a tourist establishment in the township.
Thank you. I do have a couple of comments today. As this is our last meeting before Christmas, I wanted to take this opportunity to wish each and every one of our residents, whether long-term or seasonal, a safe and happy holiday season. We have had our challenges as always this year and continue as your council to make the best decisions on behalf of the entire municipality. I'd like to thank our staff who work so hard on behalf of us all to meet the demands that we place on them. They really are a great team and do a wonderful job. Acknowledging that all individuals have challenges in our lives, I would really urge everyone that, during this special time of year, that we consider our neighbors. And if you know that someone lives alone, give them a call or drop in and visit them to make sure that they're okay. Check your cupboards and consider donating to the food bank to help those who are homeless or struggling to feed their families. Take time this year with your family and friends and remember that they are the most precious gift of all. All the best of the season from our council and from all of our staff to each and every one of you. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of the November 28th meeting and the November 21st meeting too? Councillor Richards, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved the November 21st, 2024 regular and November 28th, 2024 special meeting minutes be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. From Scott Ovell, the Director of Economic Development and Tourism at the county and Deputy CAO. He's going to speak to us about the short-term rental appeals process.
Good morning, Your Worship and members of the council.
Mr. Ovell?
Apologies, I couldn't join in person this morning. Mother Nature and the roads had alternative plans for us today. But
we're glad to see you on Zoom.
Perfect. I am here just to give you a brief update on the short-term rental appeals committee. I'll try to be as brief as I can. I know we all love to talk the nuances of the municipal act, but I hopefully won't bore you, and I'll try to keep it under 10 minutes. But so what we have is a bit of just housekeeping related to the short-term rentals appeals committee. So I'll just give you a brief update on where we're at with that. But the appeals committee is managed by the County of Haliburton. That was something I believe early on in the process There was some consensus with county council that they wanted to manage the appeals committee at the county level. It would provide a little bit of objectivity, so hosts would feel that if they had issues with a given council, that they would be treated fairly at the upper tier. There is 5 members of the committee. So there's one representative from each member municipality, which each township has appointed. And then the sitting warden acts as the 5th member. It does meet on an as-needed basis, so it's not your traditional committee of council in the sense that it has a kind of monthly or bi-monthly meeting schedule. Just to give you a bit of context, I just did a quick search this morning prior to the meeting. And the town of Huntsville, their appeals committee, I think has only met twice in the last year. And I think 3 times in the last 18 months. So my kind of belief will be probably the committee will meet fairly regularly to deal with issues probably in the first 18 months. And then it does seem that the regularity of meetings will diminish slightly as hosts and issues are being dealt with. And then just some background on the process. Staff from the township where an appeal is originating from would provide a staff report and background related to the appeal that would be presented to that appeals committee. The host or a representative from the property that is in question would also have the ability to address the appeals committee. Following that, the committee would deliberate and on whether they would support the staff recommendation provided to them. Again, in researching some appeals committees throughout the province, it does seem fairly common as well as that the staff also provides alternative options for the appeals committee to consider instead of what it would be approving a license or denying a license. It does provide some wiggle room there as well. If I could just get the next slide, please, Travis. So just on the current status, when we were drafting the terms of reference over the course of the summer, what we ran into was, it was a bit of a unique scenario in the sense that I believe we're one of the only jurisdictions where the appeals committee is handled by the upper tier. And what we found was actually, as the bylaws currently constructed, the municipal act didn't actually allow the county to act as the short-term rental appeals committee. So we brought a staff report to county council that identified it. We did provide some alternative options for county council to consider. One of those would be that just the member municipalities and or townships could choose to manage the appeals committee themselves. After that, there didn't seem to be a lot of appetite, just some initial discussions we had with some of our counselors. So we consulted with our solicitor again, and were able to identify an alternative approach that would allow the county to remain as the appeals committee. And if I could just get next slide, please, Travis. So what needs to take place is a transfer of powers. And this transfer of powers would only be related to the short-term rentals appeal committee. There's no other authority or powers, if you want to use that term, that would be transferred to the county. So what needs to happen is a transfer of powers bylaw would need to be passed by the county. We've attached that as Schedule A to your agenda. And then a consent resolution would then need to be passed by our member municipalities. That's attached as Schedule B. The one caveat to this that we identified was 3 out of the 4 member municipalities must support this consent resolution for the transfer of powers to actually take place. So what we decided to do as staff is just go to each member municipality and provide this presentation just to garner support. We just didn't want to arbitrarily pass a transfer of powers bylaw and then show up with a consent resolution without a little bit of information being given. So you are the last municipal or township that we've presented to. Every township so far has supported this. If you support us or support this process today, early in the new year, county council would pass a transfer of powers bylaw, and then subsequently we would forward the consent resolution to our member municipalities for them to pass. If I could just get the next slide, please, Travis. So just some further follow-up on our next step is the authority is only related to the short-term rental appeals committee. No other powers are transferred. Just touched on if we're again supported today, we'll present that transfer of powers bylaw to county council in the new year, as well as presenting the terms of reference. The goal was to have the appeals committee in place by late fall. We just ran into some scheduling issues with staff availability and some conflicts around council dates. So we just had to push that a bit. Ideally, we were hoping to get everyone completed by the end of November. Composition of the appeals committee would remain the same, and the appeals process would remain the same as outlined in the short-term rental bylaw. And then further to that, just a quick note, we did yesterday, we did present our economic development status update. And one thing we noted in that status update was there was actually no fee set for a short-term rental appeal. So we presented to county council yesterday and just noted that we'd recommend setting the appeal fee at $250. That was supported, so we'll just update our tariff and fees bylaw early in the new year to include that $250 appeal fee. If I could get the next slide, please. And just happy to field any questions. One quick note I will mention as well. If for whatever reason there was a desire for the member municipalities to take on the appeals process, we can reverse the transfer of powers process or bylaw. It's just the exact same process, just in reverse. So 3 out of the 4 municipalities would need to support removing that authority from the county, and then again that bylaw would be repealed, and the consent resolution would be repealed as well. And hopefully I didn't put everybody to sleep with the nuance of the municipal act and an appeals bylaw. And happy to field any questions.
Thanks so much, Scott. One comment that I'd like to make is that county felt that there should be a bit of a degree of separation between, the actions and decisions that are made here, that there's that little bit of separation and it would be better for county to be taking on the appeals committee. Just a comment on the fee for an appeal. That was kind of, if I'm not mistaken, Scott, that was like a midpoint between some of the examples he'd received for fees in other municipalities.
Correct, your worship. We used just kind of really just geographical, just from geographic proximity. So we used Lake of Bays, City of Kawartha Lakes, Town of Huntsville, and the Town of Bracebridge. And the fees varied between $100 and $400. So we settled on $250 because that actually aligns with the appeals fee for our shoreline preservation bylaw. And then we do have to be cognizant when we set those fees as well, as that I believe within our friend in the municipal act once again outlines that we can't really charge anything more than what it costs us to kind of process that appeal and all that. So that's what we were trying to be aware of. And then I also believe in the short-term rental bylaw, I believe there's some language in there that if an appeal is lodged and it's for whatever reason the appeals committee overturns that, I believe the host has the opportunity and the township has the discretion or the county has the discretion that they could actually reimburse that appeal if they so choose, or the appeal fee if they so chose to do so.
Thank you. Questions from council? Councilor Richards, any questions? Okay, so today we're just receiving your presentation for information, and the other action with respect to transfer of powers and our consent resolution will follow. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We just didn't want to kind of arbitrarily pass these things and just show up and say, here it is, without kind of providing a little bit more background and consulting with our member municipalities. So I believe the transfer of powers bylaw will most likely go to the January 22nd county council meeting, which would be the second county council meeting of the year. And then the consent resolutions will just be forwarded to the municipal clerks for adoption.
Thank you. So could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation? Councilor Richards in short read.
By Counselor Richards, seconded by Counselor Shortly, be it resolved, Council receives a delegation from Scott Ovell, Director of Economic Development, Tourism, County of Halliburton, regarding the short-term rental appeals committee as information, and the council supports in principle the draft transfer of powers bylaw and draft consent resolution as presented for the delegation of authority to the County of Halliburton to function as the short-term rental appeals committee on the township's behalf.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks so much, Scott.
Thank you, and apologies again for the short notice on the virtual, and appreciate you accommodating me.
Okay, sure. I'm just going to take a short break. We're having some technical difficulties. Welcome back, and apologies for the technical difficulties we're experiencing today. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Were there any items on the consent agenda that members wish to pull for discussion? Hearing none, can I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the consent agenda? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Richards, thank you.
Moved by Counselor Sharpie, seconded by Counselor Richards, be it resolved, items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and acted in one motion, and that each matter of business contained in the consent agenda is recorded separately in the minutes of the meeting, and that council has reviewed the consent agenda consisting of various staff reports containing proposed recommendations, and further, the council approve and adopt the December 12th, 2024 consent agenda and the recommendations contained in the staff report and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is building and bylaw enforcement. Good morning, Mr. Moore.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Before you this morning is the monthly activities report for the month of November. We had the highlights would be, we had one house. And we received fees in the amount of 11,000 and change, and construction value of over $1 million. So we're right on tap from last year.
Any questions on the monthly activity report? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive it? Councillor Shortreed and Richards.
Moved by Counselor Shortby, seconded by Counselor Richards, be it resolved, council receives building bylaw report BLDG 2224 regarding monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Park Recreation and Trails. Good morning, Mr. Guard.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
So first you're going to talk to us about lightning protection at the tower.
Yes, absolutely. And if I could, Mayor, just before I start that, just based on your opening address, return the happy holiday wishes and a very Merry Christmas to everyone on council.
Thank you.
As council's aware, we did go through the tender request process for the lightning strike protection system at the Dorset Tower, along with some structural upgrade components. We did get only one bid back in response, which was significantly over our anticipated budget. Now, our anticipated budget was a rough estimate. We weren't able to get exact estimates until we had gone through this process. However, there are several options available before council for consideration today based on our purchasing policy, and I've outlined them here. Our first would be what we as staff are recommending would be to cancel the request for tender, and mainly because we only got one bid response to re-tender in the spring. When snow melts, do a site invitation, work on some specific invitations for qualified companies to do some bids with the intent of getting some additional bids and getting it more on track with our anticipated budget. Other options would be to accept the bid and go ahead, and keeping in mind that we are in the process of just about to post a tender for the electrical component of the lighting systems on the tower, and some other upgrades needed as far as electrical goes. So council can anticipate to see a cost associated with that at budget time, and some other planned projects at the tower for this year. But if we went ahead, that would be planned to start in May. The third option would be to cancel the request and negotiate with the lone bidder, and with the intent of getting that closer, or at least down from their original bid. I would anticipate if we were to do that, it would require some level of change of scope to the project. And for council's consideration, I did just double check with the treasurer on break. There are current reserves for the tower at $355,000.
Thank you. With respect to the idea of trying to negotiate with the contractor, I think that the gap is far too large between what we estimated for cost and what the bid price was. So, I mean, from my perspective, I see that probably the best option is for us to retender in the spring, and ensure that there's a site visit included in the process to make sure that they haven't missed anything or see some opportunities for reduced costs. But looking for thoughts from council. Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Based on your experience of this bid, is there a sense that we should be girding our loins for really high bids if we did put out, or do you think this is sort of a one-off and we shouldn't be expecting this kind of a return if we put it out for bid again?
It's impossible to say in today's market. It's still very challenging for anybody, for any long-term period of forecasting, to know what costs are going to be. As I've been developing budget for council's consideration for next year, I would like to have the discussion about adding some to the anticipated budget, knowing that it's very likely that it's going to be above the 85,000 that we had hoped it would be within. But where that will land, it'll probably be let's talk about some additional budget for next year. If it ends up over that, then we'll have to have the discussion again and look at what reserves we might want to draw it from.
Councillor Richards?
I understand through other discussions, you're looking at changing the fee structure for those who are placed on the tower. Could we consider recovery of some of this cost into those fees too? Or do you think there's just not enough market there to absorb that?
It's certainly something worth considering as we develop a fee structure. Absolutely. All of, save for one of our existing co-locates, which are what we refer to the internet providers on the tower as, are in current contracts. So the fee structure would change for the current contracts at the end of their existing. But I can't see why it wouldn't make sense not to consider overall costs in a fee structure. Absolutely.
When it comes to damage associated with the lightning strike, that's where the greatest risk is, right? Is for the equipment that's attached to the tower.
Property damage as well, but certainly a large risk to the equipment on the tower. Council will recall several years ago, I can't remember the exact year, we did have a lightning strike and it did fry some of our equipment, some of the co-locates equipment, as well as do some property damage. So there is a risk to everybody. Yeah.
So Councillor Richards' comment is definitely sounds worth considering, at least to bear some of the cost. Other questions or comments? So we would be in agreement then to hold off and retender in the spring? Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder to that effect? Councillor Short Reed and Richards.
Moved by Counselor Short Reed, seconded by Counselor Richards. Be it resolved, Council receives Parks Recreation Trails Report PRT 2724 regarding Dorset Tower lightning protection and structural upgrades tender results for information, and Council hereby cancels the request for tender PRT 324 Dorset Tower lightning protection and structural upgrades due to only one bid being received and over budget. And further, Council directs staff to proceed with option 1 in the said report and repost the tender in the spring of 2025.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So next is your monthly activity report.
Yes, so this time of year, of course, is switching from summer operations to winter operations. Quite a bit of training and associated with that, along with budget development for next year and ongoing program development. Nothing outside of that I don't think is worth noting. Just open to any questions.
Any questions on the monthly activity report? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
It was a sad reality that the Stanhope tree lighting had to be canceled, but the other two events were wonderful. And I just want to thank staff for going through and making those happen and making them as great as they were.
Thank you.
Thank you. So could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the monthly activity report? Councillor Short Reed, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Counselor Short Reed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council receives Park Recreation Trails Report PRT 2824 regarding November monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. And next is presentation on funding for pickleball courts.
Yes, through you, Mayor, the council will recall back in September, the opportunity became available for the Community Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund. We did finalize and submit our application under Stream 1. And now we're looking to put together and submit our application for Stream 2. Council did support an application for the installation of a dedicated pickleball court here in Stanhope. At the same time, there was discussion about whether or not it would be possible to apply for more than one court, one being within each locale of the municipality, Stanhope, Dorset, and Oxtongue Lake. We did reach out to our grant administrator following that meeting. We do know that it is possible to apply for more than one court. So for consideration before council today is looking for direction on how many courts they'd like to apply for, as well as some recommendations on where the installations would be possible, and looking for feedback on that if we did want to go ahead. If so, council, I'd just like to highlight as well, would also should just note and consider that, of course, there'd be ongoing maintenance and asset management plan costs with each court. So I would assume if we were approved and if we ended up installing several courts throughout the municipality, the following year may have some increased maintenance requirements that council would see attached to a budget associated with that. So I think, so we did get a quotation for the court here in Stanhope from a supplier we used for our tennis court rehabilitation project. And each site that I'm proposing is similar enough in nature that although we still have to go through the quote process if council wants to for the other locations, that we could use that as a basis for this discussion of understanding of what the overall cost might be. And that's each court being up around $262,000. A reminder that with the grant, there's a 50% contribution requirement, and you can apply for special consideration because we're a small municipality where you're asking for 70%, and then our contribution would be a 30%. So I think it would make sense if it does to you, Mayor, that first gauge council's consideration of more than one court, and if so, then we could talk about locations of the courts.
One question I had before we'll go to questions and comments from council was, Am I mistaken in my thinking that we have a long-term plan to turn the ice surface in Dorset into a multi-surface, multi-court opportunity at some point in the future?
You remember correctly, yes, yeah. And I do see that as, if we were looking at that site, that would be my recommendation to council, to consider that as a future possibility, knowing that we have development opportunity with the Dorset Ice Palace that may turn into a multi-purpose court.
Okay, I just wanted to get that cleared up before we talked about other locations. Councillor Shortreed, then Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Chris, I know, but I just want you to remind, council, there are 4 days of pickleball in Dorset that are extremely busy.
I'm sorry, there are,
It's run 4 days a week and it's very busy at the rec center.
So the indoor court there, when the rec center first opened, we were running a drop-in pickleball program once a week. We've now increased that based on demand, to four time slots per week. And outside of that, folks can use the space if it's not being rented under their day pass or their membership. Certainly, it's a very high use consideration for the indoor space in Dorset, and one of the most popular things there, yes.
Councillor, Deputy Mayor Dayu, then Councillor Richards.
Can you remind us what the turnaround time is on this application? I'd love to get some community consultation in, just to make sure, up at Oxtongue Lake in particular, just to be sure this is something they'd like to do, and I very much think it would be, but also because it would impact most probably that green space just behind the community center. Just wanted to touch base with them on that. And is there a scope in the timeline for that?
There's not. I asked this very question to the grant administrator, and they anticipate communicating the outcome early in the year, January or February. Given that and the Christmas break, and actually let me back that up, because as I say that, I'm recalling that there's no deadline for submission of applications under this stream. That part of my memory is related to stream 1, which had a deadline associated with it. So it's a rolling intake. So we could pause and take more time and work with the communications coordinator and in January, February release that and then bring some information back. Now, we have been advised that although it is a rolling intake, they do suggest that you get an application in as quickly as possible. It is competitive. And other organizations would be considered ahead of us if they get it in ahead of us. However, we would have the option of pausing and going through that process. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Then for council's consideration, I wonder if I might just take a few days to do my own consultation and get back to staff, next week, early next week. And perhaps if council did want to go ahead with the application, we could do so with, the condition that, the community consultation is positive, or however we would want to word it. But I think I could get something back really, really fast.
I'd have to think about that because, I've also been thinking about, and this is kind of as an aside, about what we were going to do with the Recreation Committee and, get some thoughts on the Recreation Committee and doing a sort of a small recreation-oriented sort of town hall in each of the 3 communities. I do like the idea of doing a survey, but I think if we're going to do a consultation, we need to do one in all 3 areas, not just in Oxtongue. Councillor Richards and then Councillor Barry.
I have a few questions. These would all be outdoor, correct? And pickleball is very popular. I think we all know that. And they would probably like pickleball courts everywhere that there could be one. My concern with that though is given our weather majority of the year, with these all being outdoor, I'm not sure that they would be used outside of the summer as well for the expense. Is there a possibility of proceeding only initially with Stanhope and then looking at the others as a separate application, or do we have to go with all three? And if we have to go with all three, are we does that mean we're beholden to our contribution for all three if approved? Or could we proceed with one or two of them and not the third one? Given that maybe we'd have to give some of that money back if we didn't go with all three. Is there any room in there for maneuverability depending on the outcome?
You wouldn't be able to the first question, you wouldn't be able to apply for one and then make a decision to apply for more in the future. There's only one application intake. So if you wanted to do three, you would have to put all three on the same application. If you decided to change the scope of the project after you received funding, it'd be a request for change of scope. Which is typically possible within grant agreements. However, it's usually not looked at favorably. And I'd advise against doing that just because of that reason.
Councillor Barry.
I think I feel, given some of the concerns that have been brought up in regards to this being an investment in technically a sport that wouldn't be available for 3 seasons, and that we haven't approved our budget for the year coming forward, I just feel like I'm pretty sure it's around $70,000 or $80,000 for a tax increase, for a 1% tax increase. And the amount of money that we would be approving, even if we're successful in the 70 or 50% funding, it's just more money than I'm comfortable putting into an application at this point. I feel that right now we are offering pickleball with the exception of Oxtongue. So to me, it's an extra recreation expense without seeing the other, other implications of the budget going forward. I completely support pickleball and everything, but the financial cost is just a little bit I'm uncomfortable with it.
Well, and we are looking at, I mean, without having, seen our first draft of the budget, we know already that we're looking at some pretty serious increases that are out of our control. I'm thinking in particular about about policing and, there are some additional costs coming flowing through the county for social services and things like that. And we've already heard through projects and priorities that we're looking at, some additional considerations over and above previous years. So, I have my concerns. We do have the ability to play pickleball in Stanhope, correct? And in Dorset. Go ahead.
And if I could add to that, when thinking about Stanhope, and the reason I went in the direction of making the recommendation for Stanhope is because we do have the most demand here. And to look back at the history of that, we had a group approach us who wanted us to start by painting one pickleball court on our multi-purpose court. The interest there is expanded such that we now have 4 courts and they're there every day of the week, all summer long, which is not the initial intent of the multi-purpose court, and it's taking away from access for that initial intent to the multi-purpose court. Demand is such that folks do want to see a dedicated pickleball court. It's similar to the surfacing on a tennis court, et cetera. So what that does is it meets our demand here, and adds or brings back what we had previously with our multi-purpose court without affecting other users. And we are currently adequately meeting demand in Dorset. And again, we're open 7 days a week, 9 to 9, a little bit shorter hours on the weekend, but we are meeting demand there in Dorset, and we know that we have that future opportunity with the development of the court there. I don't currently and haven't heard recently or over any period of time any demand or requests for pickleball use in the Oxtongue area. So I'm not saying it's not there, and it may not come if the opportunity is available, but it's never been something that's been brought as a request to staff.
I'm just a question about, I'm kind of going back to the survey that we put out, for recreation, and what kind of, do you recall what kind of input we got on that survey about pickleball?
My memory's not clear specifically to pickleball. Nothing stands out in my memory specific to that, no.
Sorry, I know it might,
Yeah.
bit of a trick question.
That's okay.
Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Yeah, I hear you that you haven't as staff heard about any demand, but there are a lot of players up there, and it could be one of those cases where no one really thought to ask about bringing a pickleball court because we're not used to court sports in Oxtongue. That's not something that we've supported here at the township before. So it's just a new thought, which is why I really am curious to get their feedback. I completely hear what Councillor Barry is saying, and I agree with it. I also see that this is an opportunity to provide something with some financial support behind us. It isn't only coming from our tax levy. So I'm still very keen on continuing our thought process. Still very keen on some consultation. I think with the agreement that town hall conversations of recreation would be a very, very good idea. I see this as being sufficiently distinct and a quick turnaround that we could put out a survey with 4 questions basically and get an answer really, really fast. The town hall process would be a far more thorough, involved, deliberate process, and I don't think we could turn around that quickly.
I don't disagree with it, doing a quick turnaround survey, but I think it should be done across the municipality, not just in Oxtongue. Having said that, I also recognize that there are courts or something that can be used as opposed to a court in the other 2 communities and not. And would it be possible if say, for instance, and this is only a for instance, we decided, okay, let's put a court in Oxtongue. Could it be a multi-purpose court as opposed to a pickleball court so that it could be used for more than just pickleball? We could do that too through the same stream, right? If
I
that's,
can't see why not.
Councillor Barry?
Yeah, but my question is for Chris is there a fee that's generated by these pickleball courts? Because no matter what the cost is, which is considerable cost with funding or without funding, the entire tax base is going to have to pay for this.
Madam CAO.
I just had a thought that in council will see the report on further on the agenda about the treasurer is looking for direction on allocation of shoreline road allowance closing funds to the tune of 244,000. So given that this is a recreation based thing, council could direct that those funds go towards this as our portion, which would cover a substantial amount.
Which would reduce Councillor Barry's concern. Madam or Councillor Richards. Madam Councillor Richards.
I certainly appreciate that suggestion, and it is recreation, but our docks and landings is underfunded all the time. And that's where we need the funds to go from shore road allowance closings. In my opinion.
I don't disagree that would take a greater priority than pickleball courts.
And to be entirely honest, since Stanhope already has a pickleball court and Dorset already has a pickleball court, Dorset being utilized indoors, and given our climate, I would much rather see this amount of money be stockpiled for a few years and Stanhope get its own proper recreation center where a majority of the population lives. I think that's much more appropriate use of taxpayer funds in recreation at this time.
What do you mean by their own proper recreation center?
Right now, we have a community center that is too small for most things. And it would be nice if Stanhope had its own proper recreation center with its own gym that serves more than just a pickleball population.
You're digging a great big hole in Councillor Barry's concerns about the budget. Are your comments heard? Deputy Mayor Dayu.
I hear you, I really, really do. But I think to divert a potential fund from something immediate to something that we haven't even discussed as a blue sky thinking long-term plan is a little bit quick off the mark. I think, you know, if we were to develop a whole new gym facility, we're looking at multi-millions of dollars, and it would have to hit strategic planning and capital planning, and we've just not started that conversation. And this is an opportunity for right now. So I would disagree on that one.
Councillor Richards.
Yes, it absolutely would take many years of planning to get there. But if we keep spending little bits of money along the way, we won't get there.
I'm just, you know, I was sort of thinking about we could do a survey, but what do you think that residents are going to say if we say, hey, would you like a pickleball court? Everybody's going to say yes. And we're not going to be any further ahead in our decision-making process. Having said that, though, I don't disagree that it's a good idea that we maybe put the question out and what the options are and see what we get back. Councillor Barry, and then Councillor Shortreed.
Do we have any sort of an idea of like pay per use and the funds that are collected from the use of the pickleball? Because even if we get the funding for the pickleball and we have to increase taxes for the pickleball, there's still going to be maintenance and ongoing expenses on top of that.
Go ahead, Chris.
There's no fee for the use of the pickleball court. We do have the volunteer run township program, which is run as a drop-in by donation. $500 or less per year on average from donations related to that. And I haven't considered any sort of rental or fee structure associated with the courts. That's not out of line with what some municipalities do for outdoor courts. The challenge with it is staffing rented time slots in an outdoor space. And that's to say, it's easy to manage a fee for a rented time slot. It's not easy to manage what would happen if somebody shows up to use their rented time slot and somebody's already there, and there needs to be a situation where somebody shows up to say, this is rented, and manage that type of situation.
Deputy Mayor Dayu.
I would like to suggest that as Dorset already has pickleball facilities, Stanhope already has pickleball facilities, Oxtongue doesn't have any court facilities at all, that council consider, if we want to keep the budget smaller, just putting one at Oxtongue.
Which takes me back to putting a multi-purpose court there as opposed to just pickleball courts. You know, if we're going to, you know, establish a court in Oxtongue, which I don't disagree is probably a fair thing to do. I think it should be multi-purpose, not limited to pickleball. What I'm struggling with, and I've already asked the CAO about this, but what I didn't realize is that you kind of need 4 courts for pickleball. Like it's divided into 4 separate areas. Is that correct?
So you can do any
Shows
configuration.
what I know about pickleball. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You can do a variation of configurations. The most common configuration would be if you picture what the size of our tennis court is, that's what is most common. And then you can fit 4 pickleball courts within a tennis court space.
Okay.
You could go 1 single court, 2 courts. You can, I think most contractors would be willing to give you whatever you choose, but 4 is what I was suggesting in a single space. 4 is what we have on our multi-purpose court here, and what meets the demand here.
So if we were to consider a multi-purpose court in Oxtown, that would be something that, you know, the standard court size would offer the 4 pickleball courts.
Correct. And if I went in that, certainly we could look at and get quotations on a multi-purpose court, and I think it's a good idea. Picture something very similar to the multi-purpose court here. This is a great multi-purpose court, with some improvements and some thoughts on it from what we've learned with it. It'd be very similar to this.
Councillor, oh, sorry, Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Barry, then Councillor Richards.
I'm still in favor of a quick survey just to see if there's interest in Oxtongue. But my question for Chris is, could we do something where you have to have a membership and you can put your card in to unlock the door to the court? That way people are actually paying for something?
Like a club fee, sort of.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I've never looked into something like that or seen anything like
Just like
that.
a
I'm sure it's
membership.
probably possible,
Like a
but
membership with cards we have for the rec center, like the same thing, and you just.
yeah, my immediate thought on that would be that you'd get more use out of a multi-purpose space or a pickleball court space by leaving it open to any use all the time. In recreation lingo, we call it unstructured use. And if people wanted specific time slots, they could rent a specific time slot. Outside of that, it would be first come, first serve, you know, with a courtesy of 30-minute or 1-hour time limits if the need was there. And the reason I say that is because we wouldn't know whether or not the need is there as far as demand goes up front to support just having a membership, which means you might end up with a court we just built not being used the majority of the time, just waiting to be used for a few hours a week.
Councillor Barry.
I guess, I mean, we've kind of covered a lot of it. I just feel like the amount of financial implication, I think I've said that this is, you know, it's comparable to a large salary for a year. You know, it's comparable to and as much as I support you know, an equality of having a multi-purpose sort in multi-purpose court in Oxtongue, that hasn't been identified as a priority at this point. So we're putting in a project with upfront costs that's going to have to go across the entire tax base, and we don't know the use that would be generated from that, and just the additional cost when we haven't seen the budget. I just feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can't disagree with your comments about that. We don't know what our budget is going to look like at this point in time, and it's you know, it's a couple percent increase. Councillor Richards.
I don't disagree with that also. We haven't heard from Oxtongue that they're looking for this. Also, I'm wondering, is there enough space there? I think we have enough land, but we'd have to probably take down trees. Like it would be a thing, or we do have enough land
There's a
there.
field there. I think there's enough room
You
there.
think there's enough room in that field? I don't know, but there wouldn't be much room for anything else, I would think. Okay. I don't know how big a pickleball field needs to be.
Or just envision a
But-
tennis court.
Okay. But, you know, I'm just not sure. And I wonder what else is available in the surrounding area, because I know a lot of people in that area go to other municipalities for stuff. And not to say that that shouldn't alter our decision. I think recreation should be equally divided amongst the township. But I'm not sure how much of a will there is there to have this. So I would say that perhaps, yes, we do find out from the Oxton community if this is something they'd like to see us prioritize for them over other things that are also priorities right now.
But what other priorities are there in Oxtongue Lake that they would have to balance that against?
I think we'd find that there's many. But it's not necessarily
What's identified?
recreation related, it's budget related, and we do have a lot.
Councillor Barry,
It has been recognized that we will be putting in the playground. It has been recognized that we're going to be putting in a soccer field. So to me, don't get me wrong, I support Oxtongue, but it's our smallest municipal space that's used. So just the financial implication of this with competing priorities, I don't think it's in the best interest of the entire township in today's economic times.
I have to say that my thinking right now is that we, accepting the fact that, the sooner applications get in, the better your opportunities are, that we defer any decision about what we do until we have at least a first view of the draft budget. I really believe that. I think that we're going to get some shock value from possible increases in our budget. When we look at what we've seen in projects and priorities and what other outside influences we know we have coming to us. That's just my thinking. And I am reluctant to say, let's ask Oxtongue if they want a pickleball court or if they want a multi-purpose court. You know what the answer is going to be. I mean, we already know that. No question about it. So, to me, going and asking them that question, I don't think we need to do that because, of course, they're going to say, yeah, let's do it. And part of me is thinking if we were to build one court as opposed to, all three locations, I would vote for Oxtongue, a multi-purpose court. That's what my decision would be. But I'm not prepared to make that decision yet. Deputy Mayor, do you?
While agreeing, I think there is quite a high demand in Oxtongue for pickleball. I also believe in the principle of consultation, and I think this is something that they would want to chip into and have their voice heard. And if it did go ahead, after the budget, just hypothetically, if it did go ahead, would it be, right up against the community center? Would it be tucked behind, the fire hall? They would probably want to have a say, and they should, on where, where it might be. Consultation is something that we need to get better at, and I think this is a really good opportunity
I'm
to
not
discuss with
suggesting
them.
that we reduce our ability to consult with people. I just think in this case, what I'm hearing from different voices here is that I'm not prepared to go out and ask them now. Would you like a pickleball court? Because I think that we can be pretty confident that they'd say yes. And I think there's more to where would you like it put then, we'd hear different responses to that. And I think that there's, some of that decision-making has to come from our staff. Councillor Barry?
Sorry, it's just my final comment, but I think consultation is absolutely a valid thing. But when you have the financial impact across the entire township, I think each part of the municipality needs to be able to weigh in on that project. Is everyone willing to have a 2% tax increase for Oxtongue to have a pickleball court? Is Oxtongue willing to agree on that levy increase?
So do we wait? Do we, I need to hear we need to make some decision here. Councillor Richards?
I'm happy to defer it for now.
I'm hearing the same from Councillor Shortreed. This is not a no. This is just a
I'm
defer.
not. Yeah, No, I think a deferral until at least we see the first draft of the budget and get a sense of where we're at. And crunch a few numbers here because, of course, this is a grant opportunity. So indeed, the cost is high, but we would receive some of that money back and that it should all come out in the wash indeed.
But even if we pay 50%, it's still over 2% increase on the levy. Okay, so I think you're hearing a deferral for now.
Yep.
And we'll try and get back to this as quickly as we can, once we've got some idea about where we stand with the budget. And I would like to thank Councillor Berry for her voice of caution. Deputy Mayor, do you?
Yeah, indeed. I like where we're going with this, but another little idea to throw into the pot is that the Oxton Lake Community Center also has a dedicated reserve with some amount in it. And I know there are always things that can be done to that building to make it, better, but we might consider that reserve because it is already dedicated to that part of the township when we get there.
Yeah, I just, the only thing is that there are, as you say, other competing things for the community center in Oxton. I've never been able to understand why we can't get bids on making it, doing an accessibility access point from the rear of the building, or that to me would take priority over pickleball. Councillor Berry.
Just in regards to the application and the deadline, could we apply for the funding and then, and then make the decision at budget time? Like, could we potentially be accepted for the 70% or 50% grant and then actually withdraw our application entirely if the numbers don't line up with our budget?
And on top of that, would it impact future application processes?
Mm-hmm.
You definitely could decide not to go ahead with it. You'd be returning the funding or declining accepting the funding. So how it would affect the consideration of future applications, I can't be positive of. I can't help but think that it might, but I can't be positive of that.
But if we're going to apply now, and with the possibility of saying no down the road, we still haven't decided where it should go officially. Go ahead, Chris.
And it is putting together an application, and particularly these streams, are a significant undertaking. There's multiple quotes attached to it. There's multiple site meetings with contractors. There's multiple meetings amongst staff. It is a significant undertaking to put together an application. You require support letters from various organizations, volunteer groups, etc. So it's just something else to consider in that process, that if we wanted to go the path of putting the application together and we're still uncertain whether or not we want to go ahead with it, we're talking about a not insignificant amount of staff time to put together the application.
Heard loud and clear.
And I just want to add to that, that the application would be specific to a location. So council would still need to make that decision.
I think we had pretty much come to an agreement that we want to defer this for now. And brought back, like, even after our first view of the budget and where that stands. Could I have a mover and a seconder to that effect? Councillor Short-Reed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives Park Recreation Trails Report PRT 2924 regarding Community Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund pickleball courts for information, and the council defers this matter to budget deliberations.
All in favor? That's carried. Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Just for the public's benefit, for anyone who's watching, if we lose hydro, our live stream will go down and there isn't a way to get it back up. So I just want to let the public know of it because we've had some flickering.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. Okay, we'll go ahead. Thank you, sir. We'll go ahead with environmental business and then take a break. Given that our environmental coordinator is waiting with bated breath. Thanks, Chris. We're, just so you know, we're going to be taking a break after environmental services. But you're welcome to stay and listen to all of our exciting waste management issues. Good morning, Ms. Murray.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just my thanks to Council for your support for days like today and our weather, and we have had some impacts on our waste disposal sites because of that. So I do appreciate your understanding of the challenges there. And I imagine today we just Dorset transfer station is open, but there may be some impacts there with the weather. I know Public Works is doing their best to get the site, hopefully they've gotten in there and to be open in time. But it just may impact some access to areas and things like that for the public. Thank you.
So first up is your activity report.
So activity for November, nothing of note on the agenda from November. A lot of preparations, for winter, getting sites up and ready for that is always the priority. And operations going quite well. We have had some issues in Dorset with our power system there, so we're looking to address those. Everything is up and running. It's just been some internal operational effects there. So we have everything has been kept online. We've had no issues running it, but we did have a generator failure there back in November. So any questions?
Questions on the monthly activity report? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive it? Councillors Berry and Councillor Richards.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, Council receives environmental report EB 3424 regarding November monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next up, fireworks.
Just presenting to council the results of the fireworks survey that had originally closed July 22nd and then was extended to October 31st. We
With
had a
much
good
the same results.
quite similar. We did have, I think, from Chad, an additional 170 responses to the survey for the extension. There were a total of 690, so 520 from the original posting and 170 additional. So an excellent response to that survey. That's a lot of responses considering the size of our municipality. And with that, a substantial number of comments from folks. So just a lot of input there.
Some of which you don't know whether to laugh or cry. There's a lot of comments. Interesting. You must have an interesting job, Mr. Ingram. Thoughts from council on the fireworks survey and where we need to go with it. Deputy Mayor Dayu?
While appreciating that this is not a referendum and it is with the will of council to make the decision, I would like to support the general outcome, which is a complete ban. We had a 61.3 response in favor of a ban, and I'll voice that majority at the table.
Other thoughts? Councillor Shortreed.
I'd like to see it just for Canada Day. It's a pretty popular day, so once maybe is all I'm looking for.
Councillor Richards.
I'm satisfied with a complete ban other than commercial or local association organizations applying for a permit to hold a special event.
Counselor Barry.
I agree with Counselor Richards.
I agree with Counselor Richards too. You know, accepting that there's, you know, just over 60% that are saying a complete ban, having read every single comment there, you know, a complete and total ban seems like I just can't quite, I'm not ready for that yet. And I think that if they are organized, if there's a permit issued and they're organized events and Canada Day, that to me is a fair place to land. So unless I hear any other comments. from
Not a
the
comment,
CIO.
just a question. So just as we bring this back, can organizations apply for a permit on any day, or are we looking at, because the fire, like right now, we restrict it to long weekends. So are we still sticking with those long weekends? Are we just going with Canada Day? Just some clarification there.
Thoughts on that? Councillor Richards?
I think that we can maybe give some room to not just being long weekends, if it's going to be held by associations or professionals that are obtaining a permit. I think most will do it to a specific holiday or event anyway. I think the only major concern is the migratory bird season. Outside of that, I don't think we need to limit it too much.
I do agree that we need to absolutely have a ban during that period. I think that should be part of what we organize. Go ahead.
And so if we're gonna have a permit system, what's the thought around where that should come through? Is there an inspection process required?
Councillor Richards.
I think our fire department is best to handle that, as far as what would be required. Don't know about inspection, but certainly what would be required for them to be there, like, you know,
Sort of
And-
supervision.
an understanding of supervision
Safety issues.
and, fire extinguishers, location areas that they could be set off within and distance to structures, trees, all that. Like,
I still have a concern about our ability to enforce. We can't enforce fireworks, unauthorized fireworks now. And we're, putting a further ban on time and ability. I know that by putting a bylaw in place, it does reduce the use and concerns. But, I think we need to think as well about, how are we going to enforce it? And that was one of the things that kept being repeated. You can't enforce what you've got now. How are you going to enforce this? It's a very, very difficult thing to enforce. If in fact we've got somebody available to respond, are they going to get there in time? The people say, no, it wasn't us, and you can't prove it. I'm not, I think we need to give some thought about how we're going to deal with that. So I'd be looking for, before a final decision is made, reports coming back from bylaw and the fire department with their thoughts. Deputy Mayor Dayu?
On the previous point about how many days this could be
Excuse me.
available as an option, I'd like to counter and suggest that indeed we do restrict it to only Canada Day. Then it's clear and simple. And the environmental concerns are possibly gravest during the spring period when you have nesting birds and migrating birds. But there are concerns beyond that, including the chemicals that you're putting up in the air and falling into the lake, et cetera, et cetera. So my inclination would be, if we're not going for a total ban, to limit it to organized events on Canada Day only. I mean, New Year's Eve, I'm not sure any Lake Association is going to do it anyway. Like if we actually go through the 5 dates that I think are currently available, and we're already taking 2 away, May 2-4 and New Year's, really one more step just to take it to Canada Day, and then it's simple.
Thoughts from other members of council? Councillor Richards.
I think we're limiting it enough. I think we're pushing it enough at a 61% rate. Maybe, but I think it's enough.
Councillor Shortreed. You have to say something.
Well, I did. I said Canada Day, but now we've come around to events and I'm just trying to think of what events people have, like Labor Day weekend, August 1st weekend. Like Canada Day is pretty much the biggest event day of the summer. Like I don't hear a lot of fireworks any other days other than Canada Day. But is it going to be the day Canada Day falls on or the weekend of Canada Day too? That's another one, right? Because Canada Day, usually the holiday's on the day it falls. So it should be the weekend.
The weekend.
Well, if Canada Day's on a Wednesday, I don't think we're gonna have an issue.
Oh, I disagree. I think if it's Canada, I mean, you'll see them on both Canada Day and the weekend, or that's what people will want. Councillor Barry and then Deputy Mayor Dayu.
I think limiting it, although I do support the ban, I think limiting it to one day versus limiting it to a permanent event, I think is probably the easiest solution. I don't think that we get to decide on the perfect day for fireworks. My one concern though is you would need to have some perimeters around the permitting process, because what defines a group that can apply? Is that a lake association? Is that a community group? Is that, a family reunion? Like, you know what I mean? I don't know how you define that.
Phantom CAO.
I know that in the survey, the majority of people said ban except for Canada Day. And so if council is leaning towards Canada Day, I wouldn't recommend to have a permit system for just Canada Day. Leave it as Canada Day for whomever. We can put the wording around whether it's, because I know in the current bylaw, there's wording around if it falls during the week, it can fireworks can happen on the Saturday prior. And I think it also says as well as the day of. So we can bring that back if council wishes.
Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Yeah, I was going to suggest we just follow the lingo that's in our current bylaw. If I'm not mistaken, I think it has to happen on the weekend closest to the day, but what we've got works. We might as well just keep going with that.
Does that sound reasonable? So we'll have reports come back. Can I have someone move and second that we proceed in that direction? Councillor Shortreed. Councillor Richards.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, second by Counselor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives environmental report EB 3524 regarding the fireworks survey results for information. And the council directs staff bring forward an amended fireworks bylaw prohibiting fireworks except on Canada Day for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Against? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't think I was clear there, on the resolution. We're saying only Canada Day? Or are we saying reports are coming back and we'll decide about only Canada Day later?
No, we're saying only Canada Day.
Okay, well
That's-
then I'm out, sorry.
You mean you're voting against it? Okay. That's carried. I think we will now take a 15-minute break. One comment, I know we do need to do some decoration judging, and it looks to me like we will be here for lunch, so I'm suggesting that we do that during the lunch break. Welcome back to the meeting. Next on the agenda is the report on hazardous waste collection days.
In 2024, this past year, we made some changes to the hazardous waste event schedule. We reduced from our usual 5 to 3 events. And we did complete the hazardous waste hazardous waste survey, and we received some feedback from the residents there. And in light of that, I am bringing forward a suggestion to return 4 events again. We will notice just for information that the office time event, even through considerable effort to get more people out to that event. Thank you. We didn't have a significant increase in the number of people participating. There was a bit of an increase, which is great to see. That still does remain the most expensive event in the county per ton of material received, as well as per vehicle that attend. So just for your information there, as I have presented to council, some suggested dates and frequency for events for 2025. That would be contingent on continuing to participate in the intermunicipal agreement with the other 3 municipalities to try and get dates that are spread, through the calendar throughout the summer across the county. And continuing on with that, there are options. Certainly we can, council could choose not to participate in that any longer. Just have events that are available to Algonquin Highlands residents, or to continue to have events supported, have residents from the other municipalities to be able to attend Algonquin Highlands events. And pretty much options are open there. So as I said, my suggestion, recommendation respectfully, is to return to 4 events in May, August, September, and October. And I leave it for council's questions and comments.
Thoughts on the frequency and continuing to work with the other municipalities? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
So your next report about the mobile unit, how would that impact the decision if we made it right now on this?
It is, thank you for your question, because it was a challenge as to which report to bring forward first. Certainly it could impact upon that. I mean, my recommendation would probably be, if council wishes to consider what I've presented in the next report, the mobile system, is that they should work in consort with each other for 2024 or 2025, and in the future looking at one or the other, if you want to go ahead with both.
Okay, thoughts on the dates and cooperating with the other municipalities? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Yeah, I would be happy with the staff recommendation. I think we've got an interesting conversation ahead regarding the mobile units, and should council wish to go ahead with something in the next report, then any kind of public disclosures are going to be, these things are happening at the same time. This is what's going on this year, and this is what we're looking at for later on. So I'm happy with the staff recommendation.
Other members of council? Councillor Richards?
I'm happy with just one hazardous waste event for the entire township, but I think the next conversation completely flips that on its head. So there's my
That was as
opinion.
clear as mud. Councillor Barry?
I find it hard to have this discussion not alongside the next discussion. I think where I sit is I would almost prefer to have one event in each part of the municipality this year and have a further discussion about the mobile unit, because I see that as being less, like in some ways having one single day in Stanhope and one single day in Oxtongue and Dorset is more restrictive than having, a month-long or a couple week-long event in all three of the areas of the municipality.
Councillor Short-Reed.
I'm on the same page. I'd rather discuss the next.
Okay, that's decisive. Let's go to your next report and see where we land with
Okay.
that.
I was just gonna ask, is that an option to sort of put this aside until we look at the other one? Thank you. So thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is presenting an idea that I introduced to council, is that a mobile hazardous waste collection. This is a different system of collection that has been used by some other municipalities in Ontario and other municipalities in Canada and the States as well, where there is a mobile unit that is stationed at a site for a period of time, staffed, where hours can be set to have materials brought there, and it operates as a standalone depot, but just for a short period of time. So it's not a permanent depot at any one site, and it can be moved to different locations. I have put some ideas as far as costing together. Those would obviously need to be investigated further. Just another sort of similar size municipality did start a program in 2023. So I have used their costing as a basis. So costing for that type of a program could be quite similar to the mobile, or to the current collection system through an event and through an event manager.
For an event or for all events?
So that was, my pricing was based on 8 hours of operations for 16 weeks, locations, not set. So as opposed to having, 3 events that are 4 hours each, so 12 hours, it's a significant increase in the number of hours that are operating. And that's because the mobilization costs for events are quite considerable. So it's a little over $4,000 for each event for mobilization costs. And that about covers the cost for staffing for a depot site. So to have somebody there to accept materials on an ongoing basis. So cost-wise, like I say, a little bit a different formula as far as working it. The capital costs obviously would be higher, and that cost would be upfront and then amortized over the lifespan of the unit. So that was where the costing sort of breaks out, is that amortization of the capital cost over the lifespan of that unit. Like I say, this is just an option. It is a different way of looking at the program, and it is something that there has been interest of looking at something like this across the county, so that it could be, we could still have the intermunicipal agreement that we do now for events, where people could still, so if the unit was, parked at, at the West Guildford site, that residents from Algonquin Highlands could still access that. Those agreements, there's nothing formally in place there, but there could be some discussion about doing that. So it could potentially significantly extend the number of days and hours that collection are available to Algonquin Highlands residents.
If the project was to be shared between municipalities, I'm wondering about, well, I mean, I see additional costs here, and overall, probably some considerable additional costs. And Councillor Richards, has repeatedly said we're spending a lot of money on waste management and should be looking at reducing it, not adding to costs. But I wonder about things like, what happens if it's a jointly owned equipment and it gets damaged? I mean, I'm assuming if we bought something, it would be equally shared with the participating partners. What happens if it gets damaged? And it can't be proved exactly how it happened.
So through you, Mayor, those would certainly have to be discussions that would have to be part of sort of the process of putting together an agreement and to handle exactly things like that. And, you know, there's different models of how a intermunicipal agreement could work. And whether it's shared or it might be ownership by, you know, one municipality and then subcontracted or, you know, out to the others, or it could be shared across them. Those are all things that would still need to be explored, and certainly wear and tear and damages would have to be part of that discussion.
I do see additional staff time, and I'm also concerned about the challenges associated with relocating the unit. So it's not just and it doesn't move itself. I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, recognizing that the devil is in all of those details.
Mm.
I like in principle the idea of a mobile unit shared across 4 municipalities. We each get it for 1 month over the summer, and everyone determines how they use their month. And then the public know they've got a chunk of time in which to participate in this, that we've increased a service, which is a great thing always to do, especially in days of increased tax rates. I really like the idea in principle.
Increasing tax rates, but this is an increasing cost.
I appreciate that, but it's an increased service. And if we did share the burden across the 4 townships, it would be interesting to see how some of those increased costs could be mitigated.
Comments from other members of council? Gee, don't all speak up at once. Councillor Barry, thank you.
I really like the idea of a mobile unit, and yes, there is an upfront cost to it, but I think over the long run, we would eventually be able to remove the contract with the event days, and we would actually be offering a greater service. So that's kind of where I sit. And the fact that this could be saved or could be shared with other municipalities, I'd like to know where the other municipalities sit with this.
Councillor Richards.
On the staffing on 8 hours of operation per week. Why can't that be like a shared staff member from other areas within the site? So they only need to be at the location should somebody want to dump hazardous waste that day or that hour. And then, like, do we necessarily need to move it 5 times? Could we reduce that a little bit? It obviously wouldn't save that much there. And can you explain to me what is the annual cost of $19,000?
Through Mayor. Staffing, certainly there may be opportunities to utilize that staffing in other ways, whether it's having somebody who can just fill that role part-time and be doing other things. Those would certainly need to be explored. There is a significant amount of training that would need to be that the person who's collecting and managing the materials would have to have, but that doesn't preclude them from, being able to do other things. So certainly I have just given an idea based on that person just operating the hazardous waste depot, but certainly there are opportunities to reduce cost by shared services like that. And as far as mobilization, moving 5 times, certainly that's not set in stone. Those were, again, just an estimate that I was using so you have an idea of a cost. And that wouldn't be, the mobilization would have to be done by a contractor who would bring in, a roll-off truck to move that unit. And the essential part of that is the materials have to be removed from the unit before it can be moved. So just like we have at events, it would be the same type of service the materials would have to be handled by a contractor in the same way they are. And I have spoken to our existing, our incoming, the contractor we are using at this time, and they said cost would probably be similar as far as materials management goes. So that's the processing and disposal costs for them. There wouldn't be much change there. And those for events are just dependent on what's collected. So it's just the change in the actual event fee.
Councillor Short-Reed.
Just two questions. Staffing 8 hours of operation a week, so that's just 2 days a week it would be open at a location?
I mean, it could be, or it could be 2 hours, for 4 days.
Okay.
It was just an idea,
Idea.
sort of something that gave, coverage of service, and that would depend on who would actually.
So it wouldn't be like
providing
a
that.
full-time for a whole week at open every hour that Maple Lake is open for that week. It would only be what we have staff for based on what we're,
All options. we
that
could
will
look at.
increase the cost. So then my next question is, the longer you have the unit in one spot, the more efficient it will be because you only have to empty it once instead of, a week and move it for somewhere else and empty it, move it for a week and empty it again.
If I may, through Mayor, certainly that could impact costs. It may, the mobilization costs that I've given are an estimate. I'm not sure that, I think I've been fairly generous in that. So how often it's moved, that would be entirely, discussion that could be had, and certainly to look at efficiencies in there is an option.
Councillor Richards.
Sorry, I just wanted to go back. I don't think I have an understanding of what the average annual cost of $19,000 is.
Through Mayor, my apologies. I thought I missed a question there. So that was amortizing the purchase price, the $40,000 purchase price of the unit over 5 years. So, and then the $6,000 a year for operating costs.
Go ahead.
My math is maybe off.
I'm not understanding.
So
So we have a 40,000 upfront plus a 19,000 per year over 5 years.
no, the 40,000 divided by 5, so $8,000. The 40,000 amortized over 5 years. That was my estimated lifespan for a mobile unit. So 8,000 for, is that my math right?
I'm
then-
just seeing 19,000.
And then, sorry, 11,000. So 5,000 for staffing, 5,000 for mobilization, 1,000 for training. Sorry, my math was off there. So 8 and 11 gave you the full 19.
Okay, and right now we're spending 27-ish.
Our costs, yes.
So this is cheaper because the material costs would be roughly this.
So the 27 is our materials costs.
Oh,
So materials costs are the same regardless of how you are operating it. So our event costs are about $5,000 per event. So just depending on the number of events we're having.
So having heard your math numbers, what I'm hearing is if we had a mobile unit and it replaced hazardous waste days completely, it would be cheaper. Okay.
Similar. And I mean, it could be cheaper. It just depends on the level of service that would be provided by it. So there would be more control over that. I think I was looking at it from the perspective of if we had the same amount of budget for mobile unit as events, could we offer more services? And I feel that we could, the amount of time for services available could be greater with a mobile unit with the same costs. If we wanted, so if for $20,000, we could have 4 events a year, or we could have a mobile unit for 8 hours a week for 16 weeks.
And then we have responsibility for staff then, as opposed to it being a contracted service.
That would be staff, whether staffing are contracted or that could be determined.
It's the same. We're still with Councillor Richards.
yeah, I just want to clarify that. So at 3 events, it'd be about 15,000. So we'd be spending more at 19,000. But at 4 events, which we've done in the past, we'd be spending maybe $1,000 less, so to speak, really, a negligible amount, but being able to provide service the entire summer. So in essence, we've actually provided to the public what they've asked for in the survey results for the same amount of money, which I think is the biggest win I've ever seen here.
Except I'm not sure that they're asking for one or the other. I think they're asking for both.
I think they're asking for all the time service, which is what this provides, versus only 3 or 4 days of the entire year.
I Go ahead, Madam CEO.
I just want to clarify that those costs are only if all of the municipalities participate. Right?
No. If I can clarify.
I think we need a little more clarity here.
That costing was based on Algonquin Highlands acting solely, and so the entire purchase cost, the $40,000 would be our
Oops.
cost. Staffing would be, staffing, training, mobilization. Those costs would be similar whether it was one municipality or two or four, because you're going to, if it's more municipalities, you're going to increase the amount of time, you're going to increase the number of staff. Training might be somewhere you can save a little bit. Mobilization, you're going to move it more places if there were more involved. So it's the $40,000, it's the capital cost that whether that gets divided or taken by one. The one thing just to keep in mind is that that's just the cost of the service. That's not the materials cost. So I just, from a budget perspective, those aren't the only costs for hazardous waste materials management.
Deputy Mayor Dayu, then back to Councillor Richards.
Yeah, that was my assumption. It presupposes that nobody else wants to play ball with us. And once others do, it changes numbers, but with the ultimate potential for a reduction at minimum in capital costs. So that I think is really interesting. And even if we don't get it for the full 16 weeks out of the year, even if we have 3 days open in each location, it's already triple the amount that we've given up until now. So I think there's real hope in this. I really, really like the idea. And if we can have it open for even 2 weeks at each location, making sure we get some weekends in there, it is responding directly to what we heard from this survey. They want more time because they're just not all up here at the same time.
Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I'm completely happy with us going it alone and not bothering to open it up to the other municipalities. I mean, we want to and we want to save some more money, okay, but it's not a lot of money on the overall anyway, compared to what we're already spending. And it gives our taxpayers much more value for what they're paying for. However, having said all that, I don't want to lose momentum in the public understanding that the municipality receiving hazardous waste is a significant cost, that many retailers take hazardous materials for free, whether they be batteries, paint. The majority of materials out there do not have to be a burden to the municipal taxpayer. And I don't think the public is as well informed as they could be about the alternatives.
Go ahead.
If I can just, the advantage obviously of working collaboratively, contracts and that sort of thing, collaborative contracts always have benefits, but it could potentially extend the resources that are available to all residents in the county. So it might be, we can extend it into the shoulder seasons. We could have events year round. I mean, I'm not saying that's a great I'm not saying I would recommend that looking at a day like today, but those are certainly things that could be looked at with a mobile unit. I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages to it. There's a little bit more responsibility and risk certainly with having a unit managed by the municipalities. But it does give a lot more flexibility as far as you're not bound by a contractor's schedule necessarily. You're not bound by hours, limited hours, depending on their staffing and mobilization. So it gives more things that the council can look at as far as offering additional services without an increased burden to the tax base.
Did I see your hand, Councillor Barry?
Yes, my concern is I'm in complete support of the mobile unit. Absolutely. I think in the long run, it's more service for less money, and it's less hazardous waste that accidentally slip into the stream. It just becomes, if people know for the month of May it's here, or the weeks of this time of year it's here, that they're more apt to use it than missing a day, and things can just slip into the stream in their bags that it just happens. So I like the fact that there would be more service. I guess my question is, by having the mobile unit, is there an elimination or an inability to collect certain hazardous wastes by doing it in-house?
If I may, through Mayor, the materials collected would be the same. So the materials that aren't collected at events, we still wouldn't be able to collect, the explosives and medications and sharps and those sort of things. Those would not be included with any service, but all the other materials, would be.
Councillor Richards?
I just wanted to make a possible suggestion in maybe these discussions at your service delivery reviews for other municipalities potentially wanting to participate in this. Because I'm not really keen on us losing 16 weeks, but actually having the full 16 weeks because the cost is the same. But perhaps what we could extend to other municipalities is allowing their residents to come to ours with a service fee to their municipality when they do so, rather than them having their own mobilization units or outside service, rather than us losing those 16 weeks for our residents.
Deputy Mayor Dayu?
I hear that, and the flip side is that staff have put in hundreds of hours into the service delivery review. How can we work more, across all municipalities on a certain thing? And I think this is an opportunity of a new service to be started from the perspective of a shared service. So I wouldn't want to discount that possibility before having a thorough conversation with them, at least.
Well, and that's where, I feel like there needs to be more conversation take place before we actually land on a decision. And because there are, there's some variables that you've raised. You've said that you need more discussion with them to land on some, and I'd kind of like to know where those discussions land before we decide. I mean, if we're talking, if we're talking about a service just for ourselves, like I didn't disagree with what you're saying. Let's offer our residents an opportunity for as much time as they can get and get rid of hazardous waste days. But I think, sounds to me like there needs to be more discussion between you and the other waste management coordinators. I see your hand up. Come to you.
I think there could be opportunity as well if council gives direction to proceed with this, to give Algonquin Highlands some time to have it on our own, to see, how that goes, and then provide that, like open it up to the other municipalities as well. Because then that gives them an opportunity to see how it works.
Councillor Richards.
I just want to clarify because I don't think I was fully understood there. It wasn't to stop a conversation. It was to have an alternative conversation within that conversation to say, let's do it on our own. Hey, we're going to offer you two alternatives here. One is to fully participate. The other is to participate with it being fully within Algonquin Highlands. But it certainly was not to stop conversation.
So I'm not quite sure where we landed. I mean, that sounds like I'm hearing a positive response, that you like the idea that that we want to go ahead. I'm also hearing that we need to have a little bit more discussions with the other municipalities and tighten our numbers up a little bit, just to make sure. Councillor Shortreed.
Are we trying to aim for 2025 for this? And if so, is there a deadline before you have to say yes to the contract for the hazardous waste days for the summer?
Sure. Through your mayor. It would be very ambitious, I would say, to have this up and running for this summer. It's possible. I mean, it certainly could be something, later in the season that it might be able to get it going. I'm not sure. I'd have to check on sort of what the timeline is, because it would be a custom unit that would be built for us, for the program, how long that would take. Given conversations with the other municipalities, I think that needs some time as well. So, 2026, would be a great goal if if council would like to. Like I say, it certainly would be possible to move forward in 2025, but it may be just a struggle to get all that information together, and as well for council to have enough time to, consider the options and things like that. Because we do need to secure a contract fairly quickly in the new year.
I'm going to suggest that we consider approving in principle the idea of moving forward for 2026. Which gives us enough time to, kind of iron out some of the details, have conversations with the other municipalities, and make sure that we know exactly where we stand with respect to numbers and availability. Thoughts on that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do like that. I have one further question, just taking us a little bit back into the conversation though. Have you identified, are there any other things we could use this mobile unit for, either in the winter or say instead of the full 16 weeks, if we had it ourselves, instead of the full 16 weeks of hazardous waste, we could offer 12 weeks and the other weeks we could dedicate to picking up other things in the, is there anything else that we could do just to expand the value of the resource?
Through your mayor, it would be a dedicated unit for that. So it would have some special considerations that are needed, for hazardous waste. I mean, storage or something like that, certainly is a possibility. It's called a mobile unit because it can be moved. It's not actually like, it has to be loaded onto a truck and moved. So it's not a sort of a movable facility in that way. I think it's dedication to that job, certainly. It is, though, the option, it could be utilized more throughout the year as a collection, as the depot. You could have a Christmas event or something like that. I mean, anything's on the table. It would be entirely up to the discretion and decision of council and what residents are looking for.
Councillor Barry, then Councillor Richards.
Just a question out of legalities. Is this unit, I'm trying not to open the can of worms, but does this unit have to be only used at the landfill sites? Could this be at a public event? I'm just thinking for environmental education, that type of thing. Or are we I see the mayor, but I'm curious with that.
My mind went immediately to fly-ins, and that's not what I want for fly-ins necessarily. I mean, that's another discussion.
And if I may, your mayor, an ECA approval is still required. So to have it at sites, it would be an amendment to the existing, or it would be an amendment to our waste management system ECA, which is the ECA we have for our vehicles. So that's the type of ECA that our event service provider uses. So whether it has to be at a landfill or not, I would have to, I'd have to do some further investigating of that. Generally, the waste management ECA, so not site specific, does not allow materials to be stored away from a waste management site overnight. So whether, Could you bring it to an event? I would have to do some investigation of that. It would be difficult to manage though, because the unit would have to be emptied of all the materials. So you'd have to have a hauler in to pick it all up. You'd have it there. It would have to be emptied again at the end of the day and moved again. So it wouldn't be much different than having an event service.
Okay, so, sorry, Councillor Richards?
I'm questioning why we would have to wait until 2026. In my mind,
Because we
hazardous
haven't
waste
ironed
days are
everything
not
down
till-
yet.
spring, summer. Isn't that enough time?
That's
between
not what
now and then?
that's not what I heard from,
No?
I heard, Melissa say that it would be a challenge. And we want to make sure that we get it right. And that we have all the information we need.
Through Mayor, I mean, that's council's decision.
And how that impacts the contract. I mean, there would end up being a bit of an overlap, or could be a bit of an overlap with the contractor. And how, you know, how that impacts the price from the contractor if we were only going to use them for, you know, half of the time that we would normally use them for. That's why I'm suggesting that we approve this in principle, you know, pending some further information, discussions with other municipalities, honing in on cost and looking at some of the, you know, some of the questions that we've raised.
For all of our wonderful attributes in the municipal sector, intermunicipal coordination and decision-making does not rest high on the list of things we do fast. And I think if we did want to have good conversations with the other municipalities before even going out to tender, because there might be a shared cost there, you know, we're looking at July. Before, you know, we're really slow that way. I don't think we could do it well.
I may through, I think if council chose to go ahead in 2025, I think it would be a matter of moving ahead on our own. Certainly a collaborative system could be in discussion for future years, but I don't think that a collaborative venture is possible in this timeline for 2025. But again, that doesn't stop a decision, you know, if that's the direction you'd like to go, it would be on our own.
So if we were to go on our own, like I still heard from you that it would be a challenge to get it ready for for next year. And if that's the case, and we're, you know, say it's, you know, not available till late summer or something like that, how does that impact our contract for hazardous waste days?
At this time through, we don't have a contract for events. So the other three municipalities are going ahead with a contract with JFL, but that was a decision that I'll bring back to council as far as how that goes. I don't think there would be any impact on costing, whether we run one event or 4 events. It would just be a matter of securing dates. That's the hard part, because the contractor has a lot of municipalities to manage. So dates are always a hard, you know, juggle to make sure that they're available for dates that we would want. So, like I said, there's a lot of unknowns that I don't have at this time to be able to say, like, yes, absolutely, we could go forward in 2025 with a mobile unit. Particularly, is it possible to purchase a unit in that frame of time? I couldn't say for sure at this time, and certainly I imagine that would be a decision one make after budget. So that delays us a bit more there. So.
Which is, you know, the other consideration is budget discussions, and which is why I'm suggesting that we receive the report, approving it in principle, pending, you know, further information being brought back to us. Some unknowns here. Can we live with that? Could I have a mover and a seconder to that effect? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed. And if it's something that we can do quicker, sooner, all the better. But, you know, I don't want to place undue pressure or necessarily make a decision if you come back and it's going to cost us more, or there are some things that we didn't realize, you know, now that we'll be able to consider that during budget.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives environmental report EB 3724 regarding household hazardous waste mobile unit for information, and Council supports the program in principle for 2026, and that Council directs staff to proceed with options 2 and 3 identified in the said report.
All in favor? That's carried. Now we have to go back to the earlier report on dates for next year.
Through Mayor, my suggestion, a recommendation would be let's put the mobile unit aside and plan for events in 2025 as a standalone. There still is the possibility, but I think as far as looking at the number of events and the number and the dates at this time, it might be prudent to plan for that being the only service that we provide. And if there are additional services we can provide, wonderful. But I think we need a plan at this time to move forward with something.
Comments? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
I'm still very happy with what's been proposed.
Okay. Was that?
I'm fine with what's.
Okay.
Here.
Any other comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to move forward with the dates being proposed? Councillors Barry and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Berry, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council receives environmental report EB 3624 regarding household hazardous waste collection events for 2025 for information, and Council concurs with the recommendation made to continue to hold hazardous waste collection events for the collection of designated and non-designated materials in 2025, and Council approves the number, location, and dates of household hazardous waste collection events in 2025 as presented, pending the availability of the dates with a service provider and budget approval.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda under Public Works is the Airport Committee update and draft minutes from November the 7th. There's a couple of issues associated with that. There were several resolutions that were passed by the committee. One was that we revert to the airport having their own Facebook page. And I've spoken to the CAO and you know, we did land on a communications policy, and that, you know, where that would all live, and it would live with the communications coordinator. Now, I do have to say that the one thing that I missed from the discussion that we had at the committee meeting was the idea that during an event, or it'd be kind of like live on the scene posts, this is happening, or this kind of special aircraft came in, or whatever, which would be difficult to do, you know, if we were relying on Chad to do that, because he's not in the office at the time. But I can't disagree. We've got a policy in place, and the Facebook page for the airport is well followed, and we've, got good solid information there. But the committee did make a recommendation or pass a resolution recommending that we revert back to the airport having their own page. So I guess I'd look for comments from council on that. Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Yeah, I think we went to a single method for very good reasons, and I'm hesitant to move away from that. I almost wonder if there is an agreement we could consider by which during events like live-ins, which are extremely exciting, fly-ins, which are extremely exciting. There could be perhaps an arrangement whereby a committee member has access to the Instagram account and is posting, because Instagram is, I think, more, and maybe others, is more where you get the live hit by hit with the filters, etc., rather than Facebook. I wouldn't want to.
We do have an Instagram account here.
So if as an idea, if someone responsible at the fly-in were able to access that account to post the live updates rather than it going through the Facebook page, which I don't really see as a mechanism for live updating so much as other social media platforms. And then the control could potentially, just be given back to our communications coordinator after that.
Madam CEO.
Just to point out as well, like our communications coordinator was at 2 of the events. So, I mean, we could, if he was going to be there, certainly we can, ask him to make those live posts. But certainly we do have a staff member, our airport coordinator, that would be able to do that if we gave her those controls for those events as well. So that's something we can work out with staff if that's where council wants to go with it.
Okay, that would work. Councillor Richards.
I think that there's just a small distinction on this being lost in that it's not so much that the airport committee is able to take over the Facebook or Instagram account, but that the airport have its own Facebook, Instagram versus the township one. Because there's so many outside people that come to this event, they may want to follow the airport on Facebook, but not the entire township and everything the township does on it. And I think that's what the airport committee's intent was in asking for the Facebook for the airport to be released.
No, I'm kind of understood that, but I still think, it goes back to the decision that we made already about how communications were going to be run. And I'm kind of thinking that maybe what you're suggesting and mentioning is that, that Kaylee have access to the Instagram account, which would kind of achieve both goals. We could still be within the terms of our communications policy while allowing further. Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Yeah, I get that now. Thanks for that clarification. And I do see absolutely the value in that. In the, the Algonquin Highlands Fire Services, they have their own account and it's
No, they don't.
well, they've got their own page.
So does the airport.
But
Don't
the idea is, I think that the idea is if you want to follow the Algonquin Highlands Fire Department, you can exclusively. I'm not talking about who controls what, but it does, if the airport doesn't have their own page.
We do.
Oh, okay, then I'm not sure I understand the distinction.
What's that mean?
Right, and as far as I understood, if there was, but it was removed. I mean,
It was removed from their control. Do we have our own airport page?
No, we don't.
Okay, I thought I was hearing you say
That
we
was
do.
the decision of council to combine it to the corporate page. And one of the things that Mary, you and I talked about when we talked about these minutes is if we could understand the reasoning for the committee's request, like, is there something that's not working with the communication now that maybe we could address? Because there was some really successful events in the last,
Mhm.
2 years. And if there was something that wasn't working, then maybe we could work on that first before we revert to years gone by.
I think that they just generally want to, do the very best job they can to promote events and make sure the information is available. I understood that we did have our own page, like the fire department does, which is managed by our communications coordinator, that we would be able to do the same thing with the airport, while remaining within the policy, as opposed to them taking over the whole. Go ahead.
I actually do see how the airport would generate a distinct community of followers.
Absolutely.
Just like the fire department, like there are folks who want to know everything that's happening with fire services because it's their thing, but are less excited about other things. And so maybe are not hooked into the general corporate account. I am in favor in that case. Now that I understand, I would be in favor of a dedicated
Aviation page.
aviation page, indeed, because it is a specialist interest group.
It is definitely a special interest group. It's an interesting world of its own, all of its own. Right? Council?
I think that's what makes it very important is that it is an airport community outside of Algonquin Highlands. But I also think that it's important that the suggestion actually came from a staff member, not the committee directly. So I think in my eyes, that gives it a little bit more credibility, that it's an important thing to be done.
Okay, now my wheels are spinning a little bit. Can we leave it with you to talk about this with the communications coordinator? And I know you had a little discussion with the manager.
Certainly I can do that. I did speak with the communications coordinator this morning on it. He is, it doesn't recommend going backwards in time. Because he doesn't I guess that's where we want to see where it's broken.
And I don't think anybody's suggesting that it's broken. I think the suggestion was there's ways to improve it. That's all. Not that it's broken in any way, shape, or form. Councillor Shortreed, then Deputy Mayor Diane.
I think if I was an airport enthusiast, I'd want to follow an airport, not the township. Like, you know, I follow groups, so on and so forth. I don't want, if I'm going to follow something, it's what I want. I don't want 1,000 other things involved in that. This is just my opinion.
Deputy Mayor Diane.
Yeah, what she said, very, very much. You know, someone participating in a fly-in twice a year doesn't want to learn about our hazardous waste days. They're not going to sign up for our general account. I think in this, it is a very specific community.
My only concern is that in the process of consolidation for the communications plan that we've got in place, is that this will bite us in a number of different areas, that there will be other groups that I don't know that for sure. I'm just thinking about, you know, what all was folded into, you know, to everything being managed by the communications coordinator, and who else might come back and say, well, wait a minute, what about us? We had our own page in the museum, for one. But yeah, I mean, I agree. The aviation world don't want to know about hazardous waste days, or, you know, they want to see about aviation, and they want to see about it now. Go ahead.
And I do think, just based on what you said, we should keep that distinction. To have a separate page for a thing is not the same thing as giving the control of that page to volunteers. You know, I would assume our comms coordinator would still be very much in control of the page.
No one was suggesting in any way, shape, or form that any committee members or
Okay.
anybody else, but our communications coordinator and possibly our airport coordinator would be involved. Yeah, I can hear your wheels turning.
No, that's fine. Chad will be listening, so we'll have to bring the policy back for amendment, for council's consideration.
Okay. And, you know, that includes any downsides that you see to us going in that direction. Okay, the other thing that the other resolution on that set of minutes was that that we move forward with an RFP for a chip truck. And this came forward once before, and I had kind of lost track of the fact that we had an existing contract in place with the old chip truck owner, even though she wasn't operating. We still had an existing agreement with her that wasn't up until the end of October. And, you know, although I have kind of stressed the need for getting it out as quickly as we possibly can, this is not the optimum time. Like, you know, 2 weeks before Christmas is probably not going to get the kind of response. So I've been assured that this can happen in January, that an RFP would go out. Hopefully we won't have missed opportunities, but, you know, we really do see the need for a permanent chip truck. Go ahead.
Would you maybe remind me, what would be the cost to the township of having a chip truck? Is there any cost, or is it only they take their profit and that's it? We don't pay them anything?
There might be some utility costs.
If I may, the current or the previous arrangement was, we charged them, we had an agreement.
For
and we
space.
charged them for the space. And they, in turn, they used water and hydro. Okay.
Yeah, and otherwise it's, they're the makers of their own success. There's also been a considerable amount of discussion about the old cook shack that's there. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to that, and there's been some discussion by the committee about, well, let's find out what needs to be done. And we have had some work done, by building and fire to see, okay, what would we need to do? What would it cost to fix that up? And I think that that's still going to be something that's kind of ongoing. But there's also been discussions about, hey, I mean, we're kind of, by the airport committee themselves, separate from the other food providers, have been offering, burgers and hot dogs, which are not something that the people that have been the food providers who have been attending in the last events haven't offered burgers and fries and hot dogs. I mean, those are the kind of things that kids want. And so the committee's been doing that. But in essence, we've been competing against the vendors, which we don't, I mean, we want the vendors to be successful. We've talked about the possibility of charging them for space or a fee, some kind of permit fee. Those discussions are still kind of in limbo, but it's kind of reached a point where, they're deciding that they don't want to compete against the vendors, besides which it's a horrendous amount of work for a couple of volunteers. Other than that, those are the main points from the minutes. So I guess we need a mover and a seconder to approve them or accept or receive them. Deputy Mayor Dayu and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives the November 7th, 2024 Airport Committee meeting minutes for information, and Council acknowledges the committee's recommendation to reinstate separate Facebook and Instagram platforms for the Stanhope Municipal Airport, and that Council directs staff bring back an amended communications plan to include the noted separate social media platforms for the airport.
All in favor? It's carried. Next up, Fire Services.
Morning,
Morning.
Mayor and Council. Firstly,
Excuse
I
me.
want to congratulate all our new firefighters that participated in the recruit training. They've all successfully completed our part of it, and they'll go and do the provincial testing at the first part of the new year. So that's a great accomplishment for them. Along with that, unfortunately, you didn't have the tree lighting here in Stanhope, but our firefighters did partake in the other 2 tree lightings, and the responses back from having the opportunity to participate were all positive, and they really look forward to next year. We have sent in our compliance for emergency management, and I had the opportunity to review it with the representative of AMO, so it is going to be approved again this year for compliancy. And the other thing I have done is I've gone with the representative of Halliburton Kawartha Pine Ridge Health Unit to our 3 community centers, and we're in the process of getting them so they're compliant for a potential evacuation or reception center based on what they come up with that agency, along with requiring Red Cross to come in if it's going to be an evacuation center to set numbers for overnight stays if we so qualify. That's the highlights for us for this month.
Are we still scheduled to have a meeting after this meeting?
Yes.
I thought we had met all our requirements for the year.
We have. It's just an update on some of the directives that we had from last meeting that the committee was going to update on.
Are there any questions for the fire chief? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive his report? Councillor Barry and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Counselor Barry, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council receive fire service report FD 2124 regarding monthly activities for information, and the council appoints Tyson Shelley firefighter Station 80.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Chief.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor and Council. All the best to your families for Christmas and the New Year.
Thank you. Next is finance.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning.
Just go ahead. Okay, sorry. I didn't want to step out of turn. So I just have the one report. The second section of my finance business is the bylaw for fees and charges. But the first report is the 2024 year-end reserves transfers. So this is a report that I provide each year. I don't provide the final numbers for the reserves at the end of the year because we're still getting invoices in and so forth related to the outgoing transfers from reserves for capital projects and so forth. So those numbers are still in the works, but all the transfers into the reserves per the budget have been completed. And I will have more information on the final balances in the new year. But one of the things that we do discuss at this point is how we'd like to deal with, or how council would like to direct the use of the sale of shoreline road allowances and road closings for 2024, which as of November 30th was approximately $244,703. That number is subject to change. The year has not completed, but I need council's direction on how they'd like to proceed.
Councillor Shereen.
I think it just makes sense to go to docks and landings. Like, it's coming from waterfront to go to waterfront. It's just needed there.
Councillor Barry.
Does docks and landings, I was always under the impression it had to go to something to do with recreation, or it can go, I guess, are docks and landing considered recreation because it's not strictly residential? It does sort of fit in that box.
Council can use, if I may, council can use that money however you wish. It's historically been used for recreational purposes.
So docks and landings would fit. The only other thing, I'm not sure how this would work, except I think it would fit, is that, I mean, we've also voiced our serious concern about parking and the safety issues attached to parking, you know, in particular, you know, in the area of a Big Hawk Lake Road. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't be considering that instead. Councillor Richards.
In my eyes, parking is part of docks and landings. Whether you're talking about Big Hawk Lake Road or the Kawagama Landing that has parking issues. Parking, docks and landings is all one in my wheelhouse.
How do you see that?
I guess it could be considered one, like it'll go into a reserve for docks and landings if that's what council directs. It essentially, depending on what dock or landing we're working on that particular year, it could go towards the parking of that area.
Okay. As long as it's not, you know, coming from two, you know, that it needs to be two specific, separate accounts. Madam Treasurer.
And I was just going to kind of clarify that we do have the parking reserve that we've established as well as the docks and landings.
Yeah,
So there
okay.
is the option that council want, like they maybe divide the monies, a portion to go one and a portion to go the other.
But
It's
if they're linked,
They're-
if say we decide, okay, we're gonna work on a landing, I shouldn't, because okay, so if we decide we're gonna work on a landing, parking can be included in that from a financial perspective.
Mhm.
Okay. Madam Deputy Mayor.
Well, recognizing we can change what we use for reserves, at our discretion and under the best advice from staff.
Except this shoreline preservation, the money from, this particular money is more specific to where it goes as opposed to just shuffling wherever we please.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So once we've landed on a decision, we
It's got to
can't
be
then.
in this case, it's got to go to something that's considered to be recreation in nature. So it doesn't have the same freedom that some of the other, that we have in other areas.
Okay, well, I think my idea still stands. If we decided, for example, to put $144,703 into docks and landings and then 100,000 into parking, with the idea that because we want to make some progress in the Hawks, that would technically go to that. And then if, once we understand the costs of each of those things for this year, we could just shuffle the remainder between them.
Madam CAO.
I just want to clarify that council is not restricted legislatively to where this money goes. Historically, that's what council has chosen to use it for.
Okay. That clarifies that. So sounds like docks and landings. It is. Or can be. Go ahead.
I still like the idea of putting 100,000 into parking, knowing that we can just amend as necessary when the real costs come up.
I kind of heard that it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, that if we're working on one, that it can include parking, but if that's your desire, it can be moved. Thoughts from other members of council? Docks and landings split between the two. Councillor Richards.
Again, I don't think it matters. It's all one wheelhouse to me, but it doesn't matter. So I think that in general, in my eyes, shore road allowances should go to docks and landings all the time, even though I know that's not what historically this council has done. I just think that's the right thing to do. So I'm happy with it all going to docks and landings.
Okay, I'm seeing nods all around. Oh, sorry, Councillor Barry.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna go into a reserve and the reserves can be moved around anyway, so. Yeah, I'm fine with it going into docks and landings, and we know that, in order to access our docks and landings, we're gonna need parking, so it really doesn't mean anything to me.
Okay, I'm back to docks and landings it is. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillors Shortreed and Richards.
Moved by Council Shortreed, seconded by Council Richards. Be it resolved, Council receives Treasury Report TT 3524 regarding 2024 year-end transfers for information, and Council concur with the recommendations made regarding the adjustment of the year-end transfers related to projects and purchases, and further Council directs staff to transfer the revenues from the sale of shoreline road allowances and road closures to the docks and landing reserve.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Madam Treasurer,
Thank you and Merry Christmas to you.
and to you.
Thank you.
Okay, under administration business. First item is a generous donation from the Lowerson Foundation for the Dorset Heritage Museum. Any comments or concerns about that? Yay, thank you. heartfelt thank you. So received with a letter of thanks. Mover and a seconder, Councillors Richards and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council acknowledge with sincere appreciation a donation from the Lawrence Foundation in the amount of $15,000 for the Dorset Heritage Museum Special Projects Fund.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the Dorset Museum Committee update. I see these minutes are from October. My one concern about the minutes or the comment, and I know it's an old comment, is that one of the committee members is going to retain responsibility for contacting Fleming College. I totally disagree with that happening. If we're going to be entering into an agreement with Fleming College, that should be through our staff, not a member of the
It's
committee.
just investigating.
No,
Okay, then I wasn't there for that then. I was only there for the initial seeing if possible, not negotiating at all.
that's a discussion
I
that should
will-
take place from staff, not from a
Yes.
committee
No, I
member.
agree.
And I think that, I'm looking to you to make that absolutely clear.
Okay,
Okay.
I will. Yep.
I mean, that's not to take away from his
No.
ability or skills or experience.
No.
It's just process.
Yes.
And,
100%.
we've had some experience with that in the past, and
A lot.
this is the best direction to
Yep,
go.
for sure.
Anything else that you'd like to raise about committee activities?
This was done just before, this was when they made the decision on the tree lighting, who they were going to choose to light the tree, which they did it in memory of Ruth and Charles Ross, which was really nice.
Mhm.
Other than that, things are moving along. They're going to do a Memories of Dorset movie. They're going to do it at a Lions dinner in the winter, so that's kind of nice. So at the rec center.
Any questions? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the October 29th minutes? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives the October 29th, 2024 Dorset Museum Committee meeting minutes for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the Stanhope Museum update and minutes from November the 18th. Any comments or things that need to be raised? Councillor Barry?
I raised this at the budget and priorities meeting, but it was just mentioned at the meeting that the committee would just like a little bit of attention put at the front of the building in regards to accessing. There's the gravel's a little bit uneven, and just the step up into the museum, even for our volunteers, is becoming a greater challenge. They're not asking for a full accessible change to the building, just some steps to make it easier for the volunteers and the public to access the building. We can't see this right now because of the snow, but trust me, there's just some small considerations there. And when I brought that up to Adam, he seemed that seemed within his wheelhouse and an easy ask, but just wanted to bring that up. And then the other thing is in the budget, they are going to be proposing for returning possibly to a contract for the museum heritage garden if they cannot find a volunteer to continue, as our current volunteer has stepped down.
Okay, so they'll let us know.
Yes, I believe it's being included in the budget
Oh, okay.
and with their budgetary letter.
Okay, then could we have a mover and a seconder to receive their minutes? Councillors Shortreed and Richards. We don't need a resolution with respect to the entrance, or do?
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives on November 18th, 2024 Stanhope Heritage Museum Committee meeting minutes for information.
All in favor? It's carried. Next up, Mr. O'Callahan.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon. Okay, the first item under planning is the correspondence with respect to the official plan review. And comments that you've got to make about that, or? thoughts?
We're just circulated as part of the legislative process because we're a neighboring municipality, so it's something we'll be watching, but no real comments at this time.
Yeah, unfortunately, the only date that you can actually watch it, I'm not available. And I suggested to our CAO that I'm quite sure that at not too distant future, this is going to call for some sort of meeting between us and Lake of Bays, because there's going to be no doubt, you know, in their official plan, something proposed for Dorset that we might like to have or insist on having input into. Any thoughts? I would ask anybody who's available to tune in. I just wish it was a date that I was available, or that they had more than one date. So I guess we just receive that for correspondence. Okay. Mover and a seconder to receive. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Council Berry. Be resolved, Council receives the Township of Lake of Bays joint notice for public information session and council presentation on the official plan review for information.
All in favor? That's carried. And next is your planning department update.
Thank you. Two things I'd just like to highlight is we are now accepting short-term rental licensing applications, so that's been running fairly smoothly so far. As well as cloud permits now live for planning applications, so the public can submit applications for minor variants, shore road allowance closures, and zoning bylaw amendments, all through cloud permits.
Any questions? Those are two good pieces of news. Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the planning department updates? Councillor Richards and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Council Richards, second by Council Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives planning report PL 10724 regarding monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. No lunches here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And we will now break for lunch. Which will include welcome back to the open session. Next on the agenda are external board meetings. Councillor Shortreed, anything on the Dorset Partnership or the Health Hub?
Not until the new year.
Okay. Councillor Richards, anything on the Upper Trent Water Management Partnership or Muskoka Watershed?
Not at this time. The last Muskoka watershed I was unable to attend. And the Upper Trent has not met at all.
Okay, thank you. The OPP Detachment Board did hold their first meeting where we got an excellent report from the detachment commander. I think there's a fair bit of information in the paper on his report. The group did agree on a chair. I think that was also in the paper, but his name is Andrew Fletcher, and he comes with an extraordinary amount of experience. He was the police chief in Simcoe and took part in the development of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, chaired his first meeting and did an excellent job. I think we were unanimous in our support for him to be the chair. We had a discussion about and have tentatively agreed that we will be live streaming the meetings, and we will also be able to have blended meetings. So if somebody needs to Zoom in, they will be able to do so. I think our next meeting is the end of January. So other than that, we generally agreed on terms of reference and just off to a great start. Good participation. But other than that, nothing earth-shattering. Anything on the library board?
Dorset was off to a great start with superb statistics in terms of circulation. And I know there's a honeymoon period, so we can't expect everything to stay the same forever, but it's been very, very well received. And I think that's it for this month.
Anything on community safety and well-being?
Present? No.
Anything on the Muskoka River Watershed Communications Committee?
No.
They maybe consider changing their name to something shorter. As far as county council is concerned, I'm sure you're all aware that we have a new warden in Mayor Burton. I think there will be some discussion at the beginning of the year about committee appointments, but I know that Mayor or the warden plans on speaking with all members of county council about, what we want to do. I suspect that many of us will stay in the same places that we're at because for the most part, people are where they want to be. We passed our budget yesterday, which, yeah, wow, indeed. There was some really healthy discussion, very healthy discussion, and it was a bit of a crossover and some level of disagreement about, because of course we got into the shared services, and shared services kind of led into the amalgamation, and some members of council thought that that was, strategic planning discussion as opposed to budget related, but, sharing services is budget related. The library took a couple of dents, but other than that, everything, the budget was passed as it was presented to us, and I think it was 5.15 and plus 1.5% for capital for the infrastructure gap.
I pulled it up because my memory is terrible with numbers. It was 4.82 tax rate plus a 1.5 dedicated capital levy.
Well, thank you for that. We had an interesting discussion about remuneration for members of council. It was, as we heard in the editorial, we're obviously all too old, but I think that there is generally an agreement that 75% of county council are seniors, which is not really truly representative of the population at large. And it was actually Councillor Ferry who suggested that we consider instituting an increase. I think he was suggesting, he said that there was $100,000 out of the reserve funds that could be used so that there wouldn't be an impact on the budget. Of course, that went around and around. I mean, it was recognized and acknowledged that if the goal is really to achieve younger members of the population, there's just not enough compensation, for somebody to leave their job because we're not paid a living wage, and that would have to come to the lower tier. And the timing of it, there was also another big thing because quite often the, any changes in remuneration are made by a former council for the next council, so that there's no No, nothing, no appearance of giving yourself a raise. One of the comments made was that, you know, maybe to start now to do it so that it's not a huge impact on, you know, at any given time or any 1 year, that, you know, we start working on it. And there will be a report brought back by staff on remuneration, and I'm sure that the discussion will, you know, sort of spread out a little bit, because the greater impact is really at the lower tier. County council can't do enough to make that sort of difference. I don't know if there's anything else that we really talked about yesterday. An emphasis will be placed on service delivery, and where we can truly decide on, okay, where can we make some progress, and work away at that, rather than trying to look at things. I mean, it's like, I hate to use the expression, how do you eat an elephant? But, you know, where do we start? You know, and what can we do to make things better? So there'll be a report brought back, I think it was early February, on that. I think that about covers our meeting.
Yeah, it does. And I guess based on the conversation yesterday, I think it would be worthwhile at some point in the coming year or so to schedule a conversation at this table about council remuneration, because there are a lot of the same questions there, and they're not easy ones to resolve. It's probably something we should take another look at, certainly if the upper tier is thinking about it too.
Well, and you made a good point, you know, as well as remuneration, as well as, or instead of, probably as well as, that part of that discussion would include some kind of pension remuneration. You know, at other levels of government, there's pension consideration, and they're substantial. But that's not something that's on the radar here. So that might form part of that discussion. But if we were going to have that discussion, it would have to be before or during our budget discussions. See how that goes. So we also, next under general business, have a letter asking us to support Triple HS's long-term care master plan, which is to add quite a few beds. I know that there have been discussions going on. I think primarily their plan is to add the beds to the Minden site, which has been discussed for a long time. I know that going back, oh gee, as much as 8 years, that there had been discussion about the hospital being in Halliburton, long-term care being in Minden, put all the long-term care in the same space. It opens up beds. Anyway, they're seeking our support for increasing, you know, beds for long-term care, and we definitely do need them. So I guess I'm looking for comments or questions, or whether we should go ahead with supporting that or not. Go ahead.
I support that fully.
Happy to support, and I think as we're asked to add a statement or two on why it's important to us, along the same lines that you've just iterated, is probably a good contribution.
Excuse me, I will say I looked at the letter, and because the letter is from myself, I thought that they pretty much said everything in their letter, and I felt a little uneasy adding more to that, because the letter is very supportive, as been recommended, and I just didn't think that I should add any more to it as a member of the board. So basically, had agreed with the clerk to, if it was supported by council, to submit it as they've, just strictly as they've said. Any other comments about that? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve sending that letter of support? Councillor Shortreed. Councillor Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry, be it resolved that council receives correspondence from the Halliburton Highlands Health Services requesting a letter be sent to the Minister of Long-Term Care in support of Halliburton Highlands Health Services Long-Term Care Master Plan, and the council authorize the mayor to send a letter of support on behalf of the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
All in favor? And if we could CC that to the CEO of Triple HS. Are there any notices of motion? Hearing none, did anyone wish to address any of the letters of correspondence? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the correspondence listing? Councillor Shortreed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives the December 2024 correspondence listing for information.
All in favor? That's carried. And could I have a mover and a seconder to move into closed? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that council adjourns its open session at 1:24 PM in order to proceed into closed session for the purpose of discussing the following: litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunal in accordance with section 239(2)E Municipal Act 2001 as amended, Ontario Land Tribunal rezoning appeal. 2, personal matters about identifiable individuals, and litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals in accordance with section 239(2)B and E of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended. Update on current legal proceedings before the court, and labor relations or employee negotiations in accordance with section 239(2)D of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended. Vacation time related to employee.
All in favor? That's carried. To the open session. Next on the agenda are the bylaws. But could I have a mover and a seconder to approve the bylaws, please? Councillors Richards and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, the bylaw 2024-115 being a bylaw to set the fees and charges for the Township of Algonquin Highlands be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw. Deputy Mayor Dayu and Councillor Berry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, the bylaw 2024-116 being a bylaw to confirm the proceeding the council held during its regular meeting be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Finally, a motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that December 12th, 2024 meeting is hereby adjourned at 2:33 PM.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, council, for a year of challenges, hard work, some successes.